Hello and welcome to Builders, the podcast where we explore the stories behind innovative companies and the people building them. I'm your host Lee, and today we're joined by Kirill Groshkov, CTO of Natural Cycles. Natural Cycles, founded in Sweden in 2013, is a pioneering health tech company combining science, data and technology to transform women's health. We'll talk to Kirill about his journey to Natural Cycles, what makes the company unique, and how he builds exceptional tech teams in a niche industry. Kirill, a warm welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Going great. Thanks for the really nice intro and really nice pronunciation of my name. It's it's very unusual, not the usual international name I have. No, but cool, great. Yeah, great to be here.
Really nice to have you here as well. I was a little bit nervous about the pronunciation, but glad I got it right. So, but let's get started, shall we? Let's start off by talking a little bit about your background. Can you tell us a bit about your background? What came before Natural Cycles? What inspired your journey into tech?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Based on my name, one could guess that I was born in USSR. That's the country before it was called Russia, some 40 years ago. And my tech journey and computer journey started a long way back then. Not very untypical. Like I got a passion on computers very, very early, from I don't even know which age, maybe 6. Started typing my first lines of code into, I think it was like ZX Spectrum, one of the first computers I was exposed to. I didn't own one. It was unusual to own a computer back in the 90s.
Right.
I had to go to school or I had a friend whose father worked as a computer programmer, which is a big luxury. So they had the full-blown computer at home, and that was
nice.
That was a place I could exercise. I think I remember my first computer program was I had to type, I think it was 5-6 lines of code that would draw concentrated circles on the screen. And eventually, I think it would collapse, go out of the screen state and crash with the error. So that was my first exception that I received very early.
Nice.
Time and computers was very different back then. So, for example, notably, computers didn't have a disk, so I had very meditative experience. Every time I want to program something, I had to retype it from memory again and again, which would be unthinkable to these days, but that was the times. So I had to memorize and exercise my typing. Learned a bit of English back then because that was the only language to program. Step by step, that was the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. If I jump to then I started working with Turbo Pascal was the language that was popular in the educational landscape in Russia. So I learned a bit of that. Then went to Delphi. Into a bit of visual programming, then SQL, and eventually into web development. And I think web development, that's something that held for generations. I must say it's something that's very, very valuable right now, ubiquitous, and one of the longest surviving pieces of tech. And luckily I couldn't say I bet on it. It's it chose me instead of I chose it. But you can go pretty far now with the web development.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward. Is that a good pace of the story?
No, this is great. And fast forward to where?
Next milestone maybe would be making money with programming, because I think it's kind of professional software development. So I went to university and tried to basically learn. I quickly learned that, oh wow, when computers have a disk and I can save my work and I could sell my work as a programmer, I can go pretty far. So I could build systems, build internet applications, etc. I tried to kind of grasp and do all the work and work all the jobs I could. Mm-hmm. So that was fun, very fast forward experience, working had a part-time job in the children's hospital as a programmer. Then I had a full-time job with the web studio, and in evenings I had some side gigs to build things ad hoc, which gave me a very fast forward, kind of fast, quickly danced experience. and that also what kicked me out of university because I was
I was
a
going to
bit
say
too.
all of this on the side of studies, right? Or studies on the side
It
of all this
was,
work,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it was. So not only knowledge accumulated, I accumulated a little bit of arrogance, which I could say in the retrospect. So I skipped classes because I thought I'm smarter than that, and the university in Russia didn't appreciate that. So I was kicked out from my first class. So I had to re-enter and got some troubles. But that was like first learning that, yeah, kind of place of a good self evaluation. I was probably a bit ahead of myself back in the days.
Right.
And then and what maybe kicked out my programming career even faster is that there was a couple of years that I was very much into music, but I was like, before that I was quite a poor student, and music, like I want to play in a band, play a guitar, but I didn't have guitar, I didn't have a band, and I like, being a musician, you need a lot of things. Like you don't only need a guitar, you need an amplifier, you need a place to rehearse. And I lived in a dormitory with 3 other poor students that didn't have any of that. And I think my first gigs were like basically just to finance my music. And at some point something clicked, and I realized like, oh, I actually like programming more than music. So by earning the means to be a musician, I kind of learned to sell my work, not only do the work, but sell my work to clients. And then randomly, I think 20 years ago, 2005, I joined some team who got an interesting client from Sweden. And back in the days, I couldn't tell apart Sweden and Switzerland now it's a joke, but back in the days it was real. I never tried, like,
I don't think you're alone there.
I mean, many people do this mistake, but that was an honest mistake. I didn't know much back then, so we started working, doing some kind of building a tech for the startup in Sweden that somehow found us in the small city of Chelyabinsk in Russia. So I started working with international clients. And very randomly, I had very, very bad English, really, really bad. But 2 of the other founders had a even worse English than me, so that's how I got into like communicating with the clients.
Out of interest, how did you communicate with them back then? Like through which means?
Yeah. So 2005, basically Skype just started as a mean of communication, but internet was really, really slow. It was like the first years in Russia of broadband internet that was like 100 kilobytes per second. So video was unthinkable, audio was barely thinkable. But I think we started famous, like we were super naive, it was founded by like young entrepreneurs. I was young, shortly made CTO and like had some other manager, and like we were all learning. And basically communication was, we had 2 emails per month. One email is to get the requirements. This is what we have to build. And second email was to send an invoice. This is what we, for the month before, what we have built. So we literally had 2 emails per month. And the second month was like another email, like, okay, but what you've built is not exactly what we asked. And we had like 1 point of communication. So it's like ridiculous to think right now. But that's kind of how naive we were. And I learned a lot of things, most of like how not to work and what not to do, but in a very fast pace.
Yeah.
But shortly after we jumped on Skype, and that really improved. We started doing like weekly calls with audio, and then present our work, and slowly it improved. And then we started building much better things. But also to illustrate like the kind of the difference of the time, what was like very interesting. We were building some travel booking system in 2005. No one, not me and no one in my team, ever traveled abroad and ever used credit card and ever booked a hotel. But we had to build a booking system. And the customers from the Sweden side, they assumed that, of course, being a first world country, like, of course, everyone's traveled and everyone paid with a credit card online. And like, of course, they know like that. And we were too shy to ask, to kind of admit our not knowingness of how to build that. So we ended up with like a weird question. But why is it counting number of nights and days? Don't you like? That was an honest question in the conversation. But that's how I got exposed to Sweden and learned my first few Swedish words, logga in, tillbaka, and a few things like that. And 10 years later, like fast forward to that, I kind of got excited how easy things looked in Sweden, like as a means of doing business, how kind of the pace and this famous work-life balance, and how basically how calm everyone is, despite we're not building what they want us to build. So I did a few business trips to Stockholm and to Sweden, and started thinking like, life is really better there. I chose to move there, and it was worked surprisingly well. But all thanks to like me being practicing this English over over the Skype calls and being presentations and building things, because that's one. I think Russia is full of amazing engineers, like really like hardcore hard skills, but English is still a problem probably till this day. So thanks to these first clients that did a great job. 10 years later, I moved to Sweden, and there my natural cycle story started pretty much shortly, which was 10 years ago from now. So I joined. I found. How did I find it? I think I just Googled. So I typed CTO Stockholm. I think I typed 2 words. So previously I mostly worked as a CTO, but like I think CTO means very different thing of the size of the company. Obviously, I mostly was CTO of like 3 people gigs, 5 people gigs, maximum maybe 15. We had 15 engineers back in Russia, and here, Natural Cycles was just founded pretty much, so they got first.
So you were very early in, right? What, 1-2 years in?
Yeah, we call it first employee. Technically, there was 1-2 people before me, but I would say I'm first employee who stayed over 3 years at the company. Wow. So now, so it was, and it's a 10-year journey and counting.
Awesome. I mean, well, congratulations on the journey so far. It's really, really interesting, cool company. And I think for listeners who might not be familiar, can you explain what Natural Cycles does, and like why it's such a unique solution in the health tech space? Yeah, so Natural Cycles is a birth control, or in Europe it would be called contraception, basically a tool that can be used to prevent pregnancies. On par, it's in a similar category as a classic traditional contraceptive method, such as the pill or condom. But Natural Cycles is based on science, pretty much. So it's not hormone-based, not based on any invasive things. Instead, it's basically works by studying and measuring your body and using science and statistics and algorithms to tell you when you're ovulating or not, and that can be used effectively as a means of contraception. And we were first and only in the world to get cleared by FDA in the US and CE marked in Europe as a contraceptive medical device, which is a huge deal, really. So that's in short. And also in very short, it works based by measuring certain phenomena in the female body, such as basal body temperature, which is the lowest temperature of the body during the day, start of your period, and some other factors. And then statistical and non-statistical algorithms run and give you advice if you could have unprotected sex in a day or not, and that in turn can be used as a contraception. Really, really, it sounds like a really, really smart algorithm. It's kind of underpinning the app here. And like, what drew you specifically to Natural Cycles? You mentioned it. You typed in CTO Sweden, and this popped up. But I mean, this is, I think now, what the company's between 100 and 200 people. I think. Yep. Used. I was reading close to 160 in a close to 160 countries, so worldwide, by women worldwide. So this is, it's no small kind of company or app that you're working with here. Was there anything that really drew you to the company, having joined early on? My answer would be boring, because at the time. Now, most of the people more than 50% of people joining are drawn by the mission and our impact on society and other great things that I didn't see actually back then. So honestly, I was drawn by the stage, because I was very comfortable working with super early stage companies. That was like my superpower, like to actually kickstart basically be the first engineer and kickstart the team from there. So that's what I brought. So basically, and vice versa, what I wanted in the company is to get as much responsibility as I could get. That's not every engineer wants that. It's like some people are very comfortable kind of having limited responsibility or having more clear, maybe
having more structure in the organization, like list of Jira tasks and direction.
Exactly.
I was quite the opposite. I was really fond of making like the engineering vision, making decisions, and being accountable and responsible for these decisions. And sounded like I found a great match with the founders. So my interview, the Natural Cycles founded by a couple who are married couple now, two particle physicists, like amazing people, Elena and Raul, and they were like early parents back then. So my interview, basically I interviewed them both in one day, like Raul in the early morning, like 8 a.m. and Elena in the evening, because they had to share the family duty. And like after a couple of interviews, I think it was a very clear match. I really liked their basically energy, their vision. I can say I knew very little as a typical male about like female reproductive system, how the hell does all that works. So I was so naive. Now I'm absolutely opposite. I even can call myself a feminist now, because like it's oh my god, so much things
I can
are
imagine
under
you've learned a
research.
hell of a lot over the past 10 years.
Yeah, I did. But basically, to summarize, I was attracted to the stage of the company and the energy of the founders and the promise of it looked like it's gonna grow.
Nice. And you were as CTO, you were touching upon the fact that some engineers just like these kind of, they eat these Jira tasks for breakfast basically, and they're kind of happy with that. But I can imagine as CTO, you're wearing many hats basically. But how do you personally balance the technical leadership, but also the strategic thinking required in that CTO role?
Yeah, so I'm happy, and one of the reasons I'm at Natural Cycles for so long, and who knows, I might stay for long as well, is that the company changes very much. So every 3 months, every 6 months, it's almost like a different company, because how much we grow, how much headcount grows and challenges grow, etc. Hence, my workday also changes. So depending when you ask, plus there are other like periodization and seasonality, etc. So it's actually quite hard to depict a typical working day. So maybe highly, especially right now, influenced by my calendar and this famous like calendar Tetris that is getting pretty challenging to like figure out the bookings and spend the time in the right meetings and right discussions and be in the right place. Almost impossible these days. But how do I balance? No, actually, probably I don't have a good structure, so I let kind of calendar guide me and try to be smarter. And with that, like to kind of, for example, this year, most of my meetings are 30 minutes. A few years ago, I could afford the luxury of like 1 hour, 2 hour workshops or meetings and have a deeper dive. So these are the changes. But otherwise, I would say I'm pretty situational and operational most of the weeks. But we have also at Natural Cycles, we have a few periods in the year where we like sit down and focus, like do planning quarterly or yearly, and then I do that. I write down, but I always notice like when I do yearly planning, I don't kind of force myself to think. I think I have a feeling always like in tech how the things should be built. So I'm pretty much just writing it down and communicating that and trying to convince others that this is the right direction.
Super. And what does the engineering team, or whatever you guys call it internally at Natural Cycles, how many are kind of working in that team? What's the structure? How does everything work there?
So we call our structure a team of teams. So we're trying to be pretty flat organization, since that's common in Sweden. Indeed, Natural Cycles is a Swedish company, but also we are very international now. We have big influence of US culture as well, because it's like one of our biggest markets, and marketing is there. And so we are a mix with, I couldn't say we're just Swedish company, because we wouldn't survive, I think, without the pace and energy of being a kind of US influenced. So team of teams, we have about 4 technical teams. I oversee about 30 engineers, I would say. So like actually it's not a huge fraction of the whole headcount is engineers, for good and for bad, because I'm not a great fan of just scaling for the sake of scaling. I'm usually on the opposite side of like opposing and asking like, are we sure that we need this engineer now or this role now? So it's not that huge team or teams, and I don't work in the like individual team. I'm trying to basically align the teams. My focus is like to have some kind of engineering culture and ensure alignment between teams. But each team also has like amazing product managers and managers who work within teams and try to make sure every team operates. I don't work at that level.
Yep. Nice. And from a technology perspective, what would you say is most exciting about the work that you and the teams are doing? Are there any tools or processes, any kind of innovations that stand out?
I think what makes Natural Cycles characteristic, and I expect it to be quite unusual, is the tenure of people or engineers and people in general working there. It's quite, I mean, I'm 10 years in the company, founders are like 12 years, 13 years in the company, and I have many engineers who are like 6 years plus. And that's, I find it quite unusual. And it's not like a linear thing. I mean, some people who've never been 6 years in the same company, maybe it's even hard to imagine what it means. But I think it really transforms. It's like a second birth of an engineer. Because, for example, anyone who has like ambition or wants to do, I don't know, buzzwords like architecture or like, staff engineer or building something that lasts for 3-5 years, I always ask like, okay, so if someone wants to build architecture to last 5 years, but have you been working in any company or any project for 5 years? Because if you haven't, like, how do you know? How would you build for 5 years ahead?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really a little bit of being like a little bit of prophet, a bit of the gut feeling, and a lot of pragmatism. My not secret sauce, but like the strategy I like is choosing boring tech. There is a resource called Boring Technology Club, which I really like. It's basically just I think I'm part of that club because for the company like ours, or if you want to build something to last, the boring technology is the way. Is actually a way to go that could survive. But boring doesn't literally mean boring. It means it more means like not chasing the hype and weighting your technology choices pretty much and balancing that. But back to your question, you asked like what makes tools and the special processes. So I would say having people who worked at the company for so many years, like they really know what they're doing and they really know how to build the next thing because they built 3 previous things that were pretty similar. So our meetings could be like, okay, now we need to build this part of the product. And it's not like we're like, oh, we're going to do a discovery phase. How? Everyone knows how. So we're pretty much just aligning like, okay, in June we do this, in July we do this, and this person does that. So it's, and it's a fantastic feeling. So it's, I never worked, at the company like that with so many people being 6+ years, and that's amazing feeling. Absolutely.
It says something about the company and the culture, right?
True.
Yeah. So and when it comes to hiring in your team, in particular, I mean, it's a very kind of niche industry. So I guess, or I'm assuming really, that it can be quite challenging. What do you look for in the developers and the engineers, the tech professionals that you're looking to recruit?
Yeah, unlike your expectation, actually, the niche, the being health tech, does not pose. I mean, I don't do anything different to hire engineers to health tech startup rather than in a normal. That's maybe because of the set of technologies we chose. Most of our tech is based on web technologies like our mobile application, our web presence, etc. So it's actually quite standard. So I would hire the same engineers if it would be other industry. Maybe boring answer, but that's true. The only exception is maybe like scientists, data scientists, but also even them, I think they would also say that data science is kind of numbers are kind of similar. What I search for, pretty early in Natural Cycles career, I learned. So basically, there are famous distinction. There are hard skills and there are soft skills, and I think we would all at Natural Cycles agree that we hire for soft skills purely.
Okay.
We have a belief that tech is something you could learn, but soft skills are much harder to, like, the culture and the behavior and the attitude is much harder to learn. So we primarily like the main criteria would be like the person should be able to explain them in English. They should be able to explain what they did recently, what they're about to do and how something works. That's like absolutely first. And even at that stage, so many people could be kind of filtered because it sounds very simple, but it's also at the same time very hard and hard to do concise and hard to do right.
Yeah.
But of course, there are hard skills. So in our job ads, we list the tech that we work with. But I like to phrase it like not that this is what you have to know, but this is what we use that is what we use at Natural Cycles, and then people could decide for themselves. Like, for example, we could say we use Angular here, but the person only worked with React or something like that. It doesn't mean that they're not a fit. It just means they either could learn it or not. So we evaluate, like, after soft skills, the most important thing is speed of learning and ability to learn. Because I think the main job of I don't believe in like I'm a React engineer, I'm a Java engineer or something. I think it can only apply to junior engineers to associate yourself with the technology. The starting from like a middle level, I think engineer is first and foremost a learner. Like so, by being an engineer, you decide, okay, I dedicate my career to learn new whatever tech it's gonna change every 3 years. So in our job hiring process, we try to evaluate that. So we actually like when candidate applies who didn't know something like Angular. So this gives us a better test. Like, so we give a tech challenge, and if they could do that, that will give them more credit if they didn't know it ahead, rather than if they knew it.
Got you. And has it always been like this, where you do focus primarily on the kind of soft skills? Why I'm asking is because I think in the age of in the age of AI and that helping on the kind of specific, or more kind of particularly on the harder side, on the technical kind of requirements. Of course, these are kind of like the developer becomes more like the pilot, right? And it's still very, very important that the developer's there to kind of guide and steer the AI in these cases. But is it always been this way, or has kind of the AI enabled you to maybe focus on other softer kind of parameters, such as, like you're saying, communication skills and stuff like this?
Yeah, I think the changes because of the AI just play in the same direction that we always had, because now there's less value with like the code per se. Like any AI can spit out a piece of code that maybe compiles and maybe works. The value is like, can you explain it? So that's so from probably first to second year at Natural Cycles, we realized that that explanation and understanding is more important than actually producing code. So in that sense, it didn't change.
Yeah, makes sense. And you've been talking a little bit about the kind of type of engineers that you look for when you're hiring. In general, what would you say today makes a great developer? I mean, it's quite a broad question, so you can answer quite broadly if you want, or you can answer it in the context of your company as well if you want.
Simple answer would be a person who could learn very quickly, who masters Googling. I know if Googling would survive a few years with AI, maybe there would be different ways of doing search. Maybe replace Googling with like asking AI, but it's the same trait. Like phrasing the question, and for that you need some hard skill. Like, not that I don't want to diminish hard skills. They're eventually very, very important, and expertise is very important. But in the AI era, hard skills help you to basically use the right buzzwords, like to phrase the question very well, because the key to good AI response is a good question also. So yeah, if you ask the question well, you get more accurate answer. And then today, I think humans still act as a AI revolution is undergoing, but more emphasis right now is in the code review. Like, code review becomes actually harder because AI is very good at making convincing looking code that's wrong, same as like convincing answers. So it's actually more challenge on the code review.
Yeah, before you point out that it's wrong, and then it says, "Oh, sorry."
And it says, "Yeah, you're completely right." And it's like that's what it usually does.
And what, in your opinion, would you say is the kind of biggest challenge in attracting the right kind of talent in such I said it before, a niche industry? It's specialized, isn't it? Do you face challenges in kind of attracting the engineers to the company?
Every company I know says that hiring is hard. For us, we like one bet I made 8 years ago to ease it a little bit, and I could say it was a good bet, is like, for example, I bet on the full stack JavaScript. So we create our backend in same language as we create our frontend. Now it's TypeScript. So that makes it easier to hire like universal people who know a certain stack of technologies, and make them many people could start as a front-end engineers, and they quickly become full stack engineers because backend is as accessible as the front end. So this, and also choosing web technology, web stack, makes it I would say, relatively easier to hire rather than other more niche technologies or technologies that change, like something like Objective-C or Swift or Android. It's more niche than web development.
Yep.
So in that sense, it's easier, but I couldn't say easy because it's still competition is very hard, and maybe there's always some misunderstanding in the market, like that candidates think that this is what is valued, but instead we value like explainability of their work, not something else. But also we hire some beyond like the typical software, like typical roles like full stack engineer. Yeah, like I actually faced quite big challenges hiring more niche. Like it took me a while to hire like data engineer, and we're still trying to hire, for example, DevSecOps, which is more niche role. And this we do, and I think we will have to learn how to do that, how to hire more. But the challenge is basically the pool of kind of we don't find a match. There are challenges.
And would you say you struggle more, or have been struggling more with these kind of data and the SecOps the roles, because the process of evaluating them, maybe in the harder aspects, is not as established, or why would you say?
I think I would. I'm as an introvert, I will mostly blame us, not the market. So I think it's us, and me in particular. We don't understand these roles that well, so we don't advertise them well, and also I think 80% of the hiring success is in the title, like put in the job title right. So now DevSecOps is like third or fourth iteration of how we called it security engineer, then we called it something else, and it didn't work. By didn't work, I mean it attracted different type of talent than what we need, so it didn't work. So like first understanding, okay, how does the market call it now? And then and only after the title. So you first tell the job title, and then candidates read the job description, then you try to sell but how do we work, and what is our tech stack, and other things. So it's something in there that's wrong. I don't yet know what. So it's in the process.
And you mentioned earlier about having these different teams. I'm interested to kind of get your take on, or to get your take on kind of how you foster collaboration and kind of a sense of purpose among the teams, and that kind of cross collaboration across among those teams.
I think sense of purpose mostly is checked by like we have such a most of the people who join, they join for the mission, and some join for amazing financial like now we're a very successful company. Some join for success, some join for rapid growth, but we don't have a normal problem for the sense of purpose, I would say, not because of how organization is, but then it's going down to the teams. I think by working both within the team, so this I know less because I'm not working at that level, but credit and kudos to like product managers of how they do their operations and within the team. But then alignment, we try to, for example, by using the same stack, the same programming language across all teams, that's how like I try to facilitate like exchange knowledge sharing, etc. So people could roam between teams, sometimes switch between, like they get bored and working inside the app, they could go and work inside the web or do more backend or switch. We kind of don't explicitly promote it, but it's allowed. So not expected to switch every week, but with every year it's so that plays a good role that the tech is the same. So there are plus, of course, we create some like forums and places. So we have like a tech channel in Slack that everyone is welcome to ask questions, and from all the teams. So basically that's how you learn what are the challenges in other teams, and everyone can answer. And there is a lot of, so Slack is our main tool of like decision making, since we became fully remote company since COVID, like a few years ago. So now like tools like Slack and Google Meet are the tools to do all the decision
making. A small
making.
upgrade on your days working in Skype, I can imagine.
Oh yeah, definitely. And maybe one more I could highlight, like something that like just a way of decision making that works really well for us is like, so as an engineer or even non-engineer, you face questions and problems every day that you need input from others. So what we really like you define a problem clearly in Slack, like create basically one thread per problem, right? To not mix the things around. And you're encouraged to list possible options. So option 1, option 2, option 3. And then others either, if they don't like either of these options, they add their own, or they vote for the options. And then in the end, decision is made. Like, okay, let's go by this. It sounds very simple, and I'm sure it's in every maybe management book or it's a common practice, but it works surprisingly well. And vice versa. If there's any question asked, like, if there are no options, I don't even like, okay, but how? Why didn't you think? And I would say maybe 30% of all questions get answered by you just list options and you said, okay, obviously this is the right. I just delete it from Slack and okay, sorry guys, it's solved. Sorry for even asking.
Yeah.
So that maybe it's, I'm sure every company uses that, but now it works tremendously for us. So we try to use it everywhere.
Oh, that's great. Very, very, effective. I think a very simple but effective way of doing it for sure. I'd like to also kind of talk a little bit about the not so small matter of data privacy, basically, and how this is done. I mean, obviously, these birth control, fertility tracking apps have been on the rise. I think over recent years, and so have these kind of privacy concerns, right? So I think there are numerous publications or studies that scrutinize apps like Natural Cycles, right? Because there's a lot of kind of sharing of very sensitive, menstrual sexual activity with third parties potentially. So I think obviously users are going to be expressing a lot of concerns here. So how does this kind of matter of data privacy work at Natural Cycles? It must be a humongous kind of matter for you guys, right?
Indeed. Yeah, that's a very hot topic. What puts us aside from most of the competitors that we are paid app. So it's subscription based. Now you cannot even use it for free. Like we used to have a free tier a long time ago. Now like absolutely every user that uses Natural Cycles pays for it. That's how we finance this number one channel, how we finance all our development. And this allows us, basically we don't have any need to share any data. So we take data privacy obviously very seriously. And our business model is very transparent. We are paid app. And most of our competitors would be, or like not even, sometimes it's not fair to call them competitors because, for example, they're not regulated and not certified, but sometimes we are compared with period trackers, which is, I would say, wrong comparison because contraception and period tracking is different problems. But then, nevertheless, like a lot of apps would be, if they are free, they have to make money in some way, and that's where the data sharing comes into questions. So we try to nail from early on what puts us aside. We take regulatory and compliance very seriously, and basically GDPR was not a crisis for us, but more like celebration, because I think we did most of the things that GDPR requires already. It was more like an audit or check, and we are heavily audited by FDA, CE mark, including data privacy and cybersecurity. So we try something that might be a problem for others, we try to turn into a feature and almost brag. I think we should brag more about it, actually, of how well we do it. But now our ways of bragging are just like our certifications and audits and the practices we do.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, kind of cleared by the FDA as well. I mean, this is a real stamp of approval. And I mentioned it before. Natural Cycles is used by women in, was it close to 160 countries, or is it over 160 countries?
I don't have the number, but once I heard that basically pretty much every country that has App Store and Google Play, we are in. So
wow,
I don't have exact number, but there is no limit because we don't we don't limit by geography. So if you can download it in App Store, we are there.
Great. And so I mean, truly global. How does a company ensure the app is culturally sensitive and kind of accessible in such like a diverse user base then?
In that sense, we're not maybe truly global. We support only 6 languages that we translate into. So I could imagine there are a number of countries that we don't have translations into, and that probably makes it for example, for the Nordics, it would make a difference that it's not translated to Norwegian or Finnish because people speak English well there, but there are many countries that don't understand English well, so they would naturally not use it. So in that sense, yes, we're not global. We're mostly focusing on the Western market in that sense, but so that's my quick answer. So we're not ubiquitous yet.
Got you. And what for you has been the most rewarding part of the journey so far? It's been 10 years, you're saying. Any kind of moments or milestones that stand out?
Mostly the technical bets. I always thought that I know the right way. I had this vision of was very eager to do longer term bets, and it was very rewarding. Like some bets that I did 8 years ago, 7 years ago, that were right. Of course, I made a lot of wrong bets, so I think it's plenty of, but also like this process of being trusted, having given responsibility to choose something like that's going to influence the company for many years to come. So that is like long-term technology bets is the number one reward. Second is that impact on the society, to see how the work, even though I do like technical work, sometimes it's not user, or most of the work I do is not directly user facing. I don't build a feature like a button or a tool, but I build a way and the culture and like Lego blocks and platform for other teams that do build user facing things. So in the end, it's really rewarding to see how we ship features into, and not just features. These features like really sometimes even save lives. We have cases like that by users switching from hormone. Like I shouldn't say bad things about hormones, but hormones have side effects and have bad things. And sometimes we had cases where literally saved lives or improved lives significantly. That is very, very rewarding.
And I can imagine that, like you touch upon the hormone-based, because these other kind of contraceptive methods, like these hormone-based devices, right? IUDs, for example, or even like these are hormone-based, or they're intrusive, right? So this must be a kind of really what helps Natural Cycles kind of stand out, right? The fact that you're using a different method, science-driven method. Right?
Indeed. But at the same time, we don't want to be a competitor that bashes other competitors. Is like we are pro-choice, so obviously we're also not for everyone. We have our limitations. Some users won't find us useful, and that's fine. What we're trying to be is a healthy alternative, and just alternative, increased contraceptive choice. A little bit against of what I know, like US politics, like banning abortions, etc. going. So we're pro-choice and pro women in that sense, and we are very happy when we are chosen, and that we work for very many women.
Oh, super. And looking ahead then a little bit, I think to date, I was reading that Natural Cycles has raised over $95 million, I think, in funding to date, and most recent funding round last year, Series C round of $55 million. What's on there? I'm interested to hear what's on the horizon. What's or maybe in progress right now?
If you mean financially, then I'm not the right person to answer that, because I don't dictate that agenda, and some of that might even be confidential. So I wouldn't say financially. The product-wise, many things I also can't say.
Exactly.
Because we have
how are you investing in the product, rather?
I could say that we're expanding, so we grow in the headcount, and we're having more teams, so we could build more features, more products, and support broader audience better. Some of the things that I can say, like we're integrating with more devices. Last few years we had it was very successful and very good integration with Oura Ring, the Finnish company that's very successful, which is a win-win. We found that their audience and our audience are very much alike, so kind of serves a good purpose. We then later we integrated with Apple Watch. That's also a very, very popular product, and got a clearance there to be used. So we are working more in that area, and exact news to come.
Nice. Expanding the team, you said as well. What's the company? What's the structure today? Is the engineering team all kind of in-house? Are you kind of spread across how many different countries?
We are fully in-house in the sense that we don't outsource. So all software development is in-house, and as I said, we went remote since COVID. So COVID forced us to we're working from home, and then we realized, surprisingly, it works better than before. We still don't fully understand why it's better than sitting in the office, but it is better. So now we also hiring in the broader range, but mostly in Europe. Most of engineering is in Europe right now.
Nice. And again, kind of looking ahead, we're touching on it a little bit earlier in the kind of the age of AI and everything as well. How's this affecting the business, or how are you kind of utilizing it, if you're at the moment, or kind of what plans do you have?
Of course, plenty, because AI revolution is not to be undermined. I mean, like, yeah, it's a very early stages and there is a lot of hype and it's very hard to see through the hype. I'm usually on the conservative side of any hype cycle, being like not the not the youngest engineer in the team. Is like I've seen things, but having said that, AI is it could be truly revolutionary, but I think it's like forming, like, because we've seen, for example, blockchain, right? It was like very, very hyped, but I don't know almost any application of that at the moment. So this hype didn't survive. I think AI would survive, but still, I think it's in the process of finding its niche of where it's applicable more and where it's applicable less. One thing I could say, like I could see already, is like it's revolutionizing the customer support, like all kinds of chatbots, and we're doing that. Not always from the like I know also users don't. Not very excited about talking to chatbots. They still ask like, "Hey, can you give me a human?" So it's a little bit two-sided coin. Yeah. It optimizes our life, but not always users. But I think it would optimize users' life as well because it's faster and more when it becomes faster and more accurate responses. So some areas of AI are better suited for like this new wave of Gen AI than others. We're doing a ton of work on AI, mostly not on the hyped AI, mostly maybe not in the Gen AI, but other, because AI as a term is much older and there is like a lot of machine learning going under the hood, but neural networks are not hyped anymore, but we're doing a lot of those. But most of it I of course cannot disclose, but machine learning powers few parts of our product, and chatbot I could say that is partially powered by AI before you sometimes get to the human.
And so do you have a lot of users kind of getting in touch and saying, look, I want to talk to a human, give me a human, I'm fed up with this chatbot?
I don't have numbers. I'm sure there is plenty because like due to the nature of our product is quite complicated, right? Birth control, there's a lot of things to understand. So, and even I think majority of our questions are actually not on the core product, are on the boring topics like logistics and payments and like cancellations, upgrades, things like that. And this I think it's unexcusable that they're not fully automated. It should really be fully automated now. We're almost there, but some things like closer to. I mean, it's a very sensitive topic of like where it becomes like a medical advice. We don't give medical advice, but we give instruction of how to use our product, which is a different thing. But at some things it's good that there are humans on there that basically we help you interpret your cycle or if there are some questions. So some healthy percentage definitely asks for a human, and we have many humans all over the world helping with the customer support.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, I think. But I think starting to wrap up here as well, I'd just like to lastly, just hear if you have any advice or like one piece of advice maybe you wish you'd received earlier in your career, advice for aspiring developers, for tech leaders or kind of entrepreneurs.
If I choose one, I would maybe say to not underestimate the value of I will make this advice two-sided. So to not underestimate the value of a tenure, of staying in the same company or the same product for a longer time, because it gives you something unique after basically it gives you feedback on the longer bets, which you cannot get anywhere else except making these bets and surviving them, basically facing with your own source code or your own architecture decisions 2-3 years after. And that's very educational that you cannot get otherwise. At the same time, the second side of this advice, I mean, I was very lucky that I was in it only works well when you're in a good environment, in the growing company that really appreciates your work and rewards you well, because it doesn't mean to stay in the environment that's not healthy and not good for you, despite that you will see your code, but then it's not then you better you better switch. But if the environment is good, so unlike, because the hype is like jump ship, jump companies very often to get a better pay. So my advice would be think twice, because you might get something unique that would just basically be much better for you as an engineer.
Really interesting advice, actually. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Kirill, before I wrap up here?
No, I could say that we're hiring. So if any of the listeners get curious about Natural Cycles, we almost always have open roles around web development and other engineers. So please go to naturalcycles.com and apply. Otherwise, maybe not. Was really fun to have a chat with you, Lee.
No, thank you, Kirill. Thanks so much for joining and sharing your insights and also experiences with us today. So yeah, really, really interesting, fascinating to hear about Natural Cycles and the journey so far. Really, really cool company, cool product that you guys are building. So, yeah, thank you again to our listeners as well. Thank you for tuning in, and please don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with your friends, your colleagues, whoever. Until next time, keep on innovating and keep on building. We'll see you soon.